Right, good evening everybody, and warm welcome to Stratford District Council Planning Committee this evening. My name is Councillor Stuart Keithley and I'll be your chair this evening. So before we start, just a little housekeeping. First of all, there's no fire test scheduled, so if the alarm does go, we have to leave back corner of this room and we'll meet over in the car park of the Windmill. Second thing is about microphones. Just to remind everybody, please, this is recorded for the benefit of those people watching at home or elsewhere. And so if you make sure that you speak into your microphones and we can pick up the recording of your voice. Thank you very much. Okay, so some introductions now. From Democratic Services this evening, Olivia Quinn, Amy Shipley, our legal advisor, Emily Napier, our senior planner, Charlotte Dix and Ryan O'Keefe. They're our planning officers tonight. Emily, I'll ask if you've got a statement to make, please.
Thank you, Chair. My role tonight is to provide impartial advice to committee members and to assist members in their decision making.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so we'll crack on with the agenda. First of all, item 1 is apologies for absence, please, Olivia.
Chair, we've got apologies from Councillors Harding and Holmes.
Thank you very much. And item 2, disclosures of interest, members. I'll start with Councillor Fleming.
Yeah, I'm Warwickshire County Council candidate for the item in Salford Priors, so I just thought I'd register that. That will be the division that I'm going to be standing for.
Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chair. Much like the last meeting, the application 2400721 FUL, I was the previous neighbouring ward member, and also I know some of the speakers, but I come here with an open mind.
Thank you. Councillor Hencher-Seraphin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also a county council candidate for the Studley division, which Appleborough Green on item 5 comes into. I also know Councillor Maureen Berry. As a few years ago, this used to be in my ward, but I come with open mind.
Thank you. Nobody else indicating, but I've got a disclosure. I did visit the area around the Brambles, Bevington, to get a feel for the context of it. I stayed on the public footpath. I didn't talk to anybody, and I have an open mind as I come to this meeting. So thank you for that. Okay, thank you, members. So minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of April. So if you've had no doubt had a chance to read these minutes, could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Eden. A seconder, Councillor Hencher-Seraphin. Show of hands to approve the minutes, please. And any abstentions for not being here? 1. Councillor Passingham. We're on the approval of the minutes. So would you like to join the others in approving the minutes or abstaining if you weren't at the meeting? So you're an abstention then. So we have 2 abstentions. Okay, so we can move on to the planning applications. And before we do, I just wanted to highlight that item 2402855 FUL, which was land adjacent to Woodlands Farm. That's the Hockley Heath item is item 6 on the agenda. There are no speakers registered, so that's been delegated to officers, so we won't be covering that this evening. So item 4 of the agenda is the application 2402532 FUL. It's the Brambles, Bevington, Salford Priors, proposed 2-storey extension to an existing barn. And the presenting officer is Charlotte Dix. Charlotte, if you're ready to take us through that application, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the site is indicated on the map by the black circle. The application site is located in the open countryside with a Grade 2 listed building known as Cock Bevington Farmhouse to the south. The application site was originally farm buildings associated with that farmhouse, and it was converted in the early 1990s. So this slide shows the application site edged in red. The house, the barn conversion itself is the building to the right within the red line. The other building within the red line to the left-hand side is an existing building which is used for ancillary residential storage. So the red building you can see to the south is the listed, Grade 2 listed farmhouse, and the site is surrounded by fields with the dotted green lines indicating a public right-of-way. So this is a full application for a 2-storey extension to the existing converted barn. The plans on the screen show the proposed floor plans at first and ground floor. You can see the outline of the extension outlined in orange. So this slide shows the existing west elevation at the top of the screen, and then you can see the proposed west elevation on the bottom side of the screen. So the arrow on the floor plan on the right-hand side indicates which elevation we're looking at. This elevation is the front elevation of the converted barn. So this slide shows the existing and proposed south elevation with the 2-storey extension shown on the left-hand side of the screen at the bottom. You can see that the 2-storey extension would abut the existing hip roof single-storey aspect. So this slide shows the existing and proposed eastern elevation, and you can see that the proposed elevations don't indicate the whole of the existing barn conversion. This just shows an image with the existing building, and you can see the 2-storey extension beyond it. This slide shows the northern elevation, both existing and proposed. You can see the extension on the right-hand side of the screen, showing the proposed balcony and the glazing, which is detailed in the report. As shown by the map in the bottom corner, you can see the arrow facing towards the elevation we're looking at here. So this is taken from the west, looking towards the front elevation of the barn conversion. The extension would be on the left-hand side, where you can just make out the hipped roof of the single-storey aspect. This photo is taken moving around the property to the northeast now, looking back towards the existing converted barn. So the extension would be visible on the right-hand side of the screen beyond the existing single-storey aspect. And then this slide shows the view from the rear garden. So we're looking from the east towards this elevation now, back towards the rear elevation of the barn conversion. So this shows the traditional glazing style and simple form of the converted barn. Just to clarify, there are no updates, and officer recommendation is to refuse the application in line with the reasons on pages 15 and 16 of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Charlotte. We have some registered speakers. The first is Mr. Michael Gibson, who's the applicant. Mr. Gibson, good evening. If you'd like to come up to the desk in front of you. So you should be able to press the right-hand button of the silver buttons to turn the microphone on. And if you just bring it down to you a little bit, Mr. Gibson, that's it. Great. That's right. That's fine. So you have 3 minutes to tell us about your proposal. I'll just give you a sort of little, heads up to 30 seconds before the 3 minutes are up. So when you're ready to start, just take it away for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. Brief history. I ran a successful design business, originally based in Birmingham and relocated to Cheltenham, with a team of designers and architectural technicians with major projects involving historical listed buildings. Briefly, some of the projects included the Empire Leicester Square, London, hotels in Ireland, France, Spain, Germany, entertainment complex for the US Air Force at RAF Milton Hall. You can see from image 1 that the access road creates significant separation between my property and the listed building to the south. Whilst I live in an old barn conversion, it's been confirmed that my property is not curtilage listed. If we go on to image 2, please. I have lived in the Brambles since 1994. I lost my wife to cancer, unfortunately, in 2012. I do not want to give up my home and wish to live out my retirement years in our family home, enjoying the peaceful views that the local countryside has to offer. Reason for my extension is that my son and family can move into the main home and I can enjoy my privacy in the extension. I have built in some future proofing by floor framing access for a future lift if needed and making the stairway tread and risers ambulance compliant. Image 3, please. Where possible, the new extension matches the existing 2-storey building feature, balancing out the whole of the site. Locating the lounge area on the first floor, taking full advantage of the borrowed view, lifting it above any potential fill border growth. Image 4, please. Where possible, the new extension matches the existing 2-storey building features, balancing the whole site. Locating the lounge area on the first floor, taking full advantage of the... Sorry. Image 4, please. Originally, there was a much larger barn structure over the area of the proposed extension. The proposed extension will take up approximately under a third of its original barn area, which can be seen on the screen. The existing location drawing submitted with application in 1991 as indicated on page 83 under residential amenity. The proposed extension is also set back 25 metres from the neighbouring property. In your planning report on page 87, the curtilage boundary indicated at the bottom of the drawing is incorrectly marked. It has been marked as going through my front entrance, cutting off the existing 2-storey barn conversion.
Could Mr. Gibson, do you mind sort of just winding it up now, please?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So the most important point.
Okay, image 5, please. See the distance from the nearest direct property on the horizon. The proposals sit well within the existing ground, balancing in with the existing structure and shielded by tree lines, hedgerows and garden wall foliage. I would ask that you grant permission for this proposed extension.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gibson. Members, do we have any questions for Mr. Gibson, please? Yeah, I've got a couple. So, Councillor Hencher-Seraphin first. I'll come to you in a minute.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Parry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Right. Have you any objections from your neighbours at all?
None at all.
None at all?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening.
I wonder whether you could just help me on the orientation of where the extension is. If we go back to the previous slide, officers, where we've got the...
Councillor Parry, could you just put your microphone on and bring it... Sorry, yeah, bring it down so we can record you. Thank you. That's fine.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Dixon. I wonder whether you could just help me just gain a bit of understanding on the orientation of which part is your proposed new extension. I'm assuming it's the one nearest the top of the slide.
Yeah, if you just look south of the location there, where the track is, it's repeating that block just north of the barn conversion. The existing barn section in the middle is no longer there, so we're only taking up part of that. And then the view that you've seen on the photo is from the back there, the glazed area, across the fields up to the building in the distance.
You'll have to forgive me because my eyes aren't very good at the moment. So the block in the sort of acute triangle, if I may say.
Yeah,
Is that part of the building, or is that the grade
that's
2
part, that's the
listed?
existing building as it is now.
That's the existing
Yeah.
building.
The barn is the section, all right, just to the, well, as you're facing it, left of
Right.
that.
Don't worry, I'll get the officers if necessary, just to confirm a few things. We'll
Okay.
come to that.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Any further questions, members? Councillor Harvey, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Mr Gibson. Just a bit of history that you might know that I don't know, and forgive me if it's in the officer's report. Is it the barn, the farmhouse building across the way from you is the listed building?
It's a listed building, yeah.
And the barn conversion area to the north on the diagram as we see it, was that altogether one farm at some stage or another?
Well, when I came across it, it was 1991. And so then the building was just started, it's in construction there. And that was when I purchased it. But I'm not sure just how much of that was linked to the original farmhouse or not, as I sit here now.
Fine.
But I can go back further, and I think there's some evidence going to be given later which shows that farming was given up in some period 1983, I think, or 81.
Okay. I think that's quite important to establish the context of what was the whole of the farming area or not in terms of conservation and listed building consent. Sort of. So I'll ask the question again, I think.
Yeah, we can come back to the officers with that. And in fact, Councillor Parry, just to say, I personally found it quite difficult to get these elevations in my head as well. So we're going to have the opportunity to see those again from the officer. Any further questions? It looks like not. So, Mr. Gibson, thank you very much for coming along tonight and explaining your proposal.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to switch this off. Left or the right again?
Okay, we have another speaker, Councillor Stanley. Good evening, Councillor Stanley. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming along. And Councillor Stanley, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. I will reset the clock. So I'll give you a 30 seconds sort of warning as we approach the 5 minutes. So when you're ready, if you want to kick off, thank you.
Thank you. Can we just refer back to image number 2 on Mr Gibson's slides, please? Thank you. So thank you, Chair. Members, this application seen before you this evening should be approved for the following reasons. The application is in compliance with CS9 design and distinctiveness. The extension has been designed to reflect the main dwelling and is of high quality, so it also meets criteria for SP4 high quality design. The materials chosen for the application reflect on what is already used on the existing building. This application is in compliance with CS20, existing housing stock in buildings. If I can draw members' attention specifically to Part B, point 5.63, which states, in quote, modifications to dwellings such as extensions and the replacement of dwellings can enable homeowners to realise the potential of their property and adapt their homes to changing needs and improve the quality of their lives without leaving their community. The Council supports such aspirations. For this application, this application will allow for the above. Excuse me. The application is also in compliance with CS8 historic environment and SP1 protecting the historic environment. The site is located near to a listed building. However, there would be no impact to the setting of this. The extension is small in scale in proportion to what used to be there, and the main building and both dwellings are detached and have an access drive, as you've seen, between both settlements being well hidden behind large landscaped hedges. The case officer report states that the barn tanges are not in themselves listed buildings or curtilage listed buildings. It goes on to state about forming part of a farmstead setting of which the site has not been a farm for over 40 years. The cattle moved out in 1983. The point is therefore irrelevant. Just to make reference to where the extension will be, at the top of the L on the north side, that is where the smallest scale extension will be, and between the gap there used to be a larger barn, so it was 3 times the size of what is being asked for this evening. The application is in compliance with SP3, protecting the rural character and environment. From what we can see within the application, there is no detrimental impact on that of the surrounding landscape or to the listed building located nearby. The case officer also brings into their report about SP10 conversions of redundant agricultural buildings for houses and other uses. This point is completely irrelevant to the application seen before us this evening. The building is neither agricultural or redundant. The building has no agricultural ties to it, so it is unfair to use agricultural reasons to refuse this application. Finally, the application is also in compliance with SP15 car parking. The proposed is to be an ancillary accommodation, so would not result in additional vehicle movement to and from the property. The site plan also demonstrates clearly that the location has ample parking it has ample parking of what will become a 3-bedroom dwelling. In conclusion, members, I have mentioned this evening policies from Salford 7 Neighbourhood Development Plan, which were not mentioned in the officer's report, which show why the local plan is in favour of development such as this, and this is where weight should be given. I would encourage you to vote in favour of this application this evening. It has the backing of the parish council and myself as ward member and the local residents, and there are no objections. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stanley. Right, members, do we have any questions for Councillor Stanley? They're all shaking their heads, so it looks like we're very happy. Thank you very much indeed for coming along and presenting. Right, members, now, so we could have the opportunity now to ask the officers for any points of clarification. And Councillor Parry.
Yes, Emily, I just wonder whether you just give some further clarification onto the orientation of the extension in its context to where the Grade 2 listed building is. Sorry, it was just all a little bit, it's very good, but it was a little bit quick for me earlier.
Thank you, Councillor. So if you can see on the screen above, so the Grade 2 listed farmhouse is the red building you can see to the south. So immediately to the north of that is the converted barn that we are speaking about here. The extension would be on the northwestern side of the barn. So the other side from the farmhouse, but projecting out towards the west. Into that existing gap.
Are you happy with that? Yeah, just need a clarification on it. Right, okay. Yes, Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chair. To the left, where you've got the existing dwelling, then you've got the gap, and then there's the old bit of the oval that comes down. Is that a garage or is that at the moment? What's that at the moment?
Yes, the building that you can see on the western side of the red line is an outbuilding which is used as ancillary residential storage and accommodation. So related to the application site. That's right, yes.
Members, any further points of clarification? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Could I ask my historic question? I understand that the building that's marked in red is the listed building and that it is the other buildings are not listed. What I need to understand is whether those buildings which aren't listed originally formed part of a farm as a whole and therefore should they be seen in context. I accept the division between what is and isn't listed, but what was the farm? Was it just the house? Was it the other buildings? Can you tell me what the history is, please?
Yes, of course, Councillor. So whilst the converted barn is not curtilage listed, it was originally associated with the farmhouse, the Grade 2 listed farmhouse. So the buildings that you can see within the red line were all part of the original farmstead. And on page 10 of the report, it does mention this. So the case officers liaise with the council's conservation officer, and whilst it's been acknowledged that the conservation officer said that the barn range, sorry, pardon me, are not in themselves listed buildings or curtilage listed buildings, they contribute to the significance of the listed farmhouse as traditional agricultural buildings forming part of a farmstead setting. So that's the second paragraph from the bottom of page 10.
Thank you. Second question.
Yes, of course.
Reference is made on page 10 to the Barnwell case, but no explanation is given. It's the implication is it's an implied reference. We might not know what the Barnwell case is, and even if we did, we might be taking different inferences from it. Could you outline why you made reference to it and what the importance of it is, please?
Yes, absolutely, Councillor. So the Barnwell case has been mentioned in the report, outlining that the decision makers got to accord considerable importance and weight to the desirability of preserving the setting of listed buildings. So whilst we've noted that the converted barn is not curtilage listed, it is in, any development would affect the setting of the listed building. So it's for the decision maker to weigh that in the planning balance as to what sort of level of harm that would be. And the case officer has discussed it with the conservation officer, and less than substantial harm is the outcome that the case officer has reached. So it's within the decision maker's remit then to assess that impact on the listed building against the planning balance.
Thank you. Final question. On page 10, you make reference to effectively saying that this design is neither simple nor small. And normally in cases of, ordinary residences, an extension would be required to be subservient. One of the things that struck me about the report was, apart from reference under the sill calculation, there's no measurements, there's no scales, there's no numbers to indicate size. So my question is, how would you justify your statements that this is neither simple in design nor small in scale?
Sorry, can you just refer us to the page where it says that?
Page 10.
I think obviously the officer report should be read in kind of context as a whole. And if you refer to page 12, particularly the bottom of page 12, and then the top of page 13, the officer goes into more detail about the cumulative impact, and does a more detailed assessment of the scale, and how it's read against the existing building and the design of the existing building as well, in terms of things like the fenestration. So the officer also talks about the cumulative effect of the size, scale, high-level glazing and domesticised features. And then talks about the fact that these alterations are not sensitive to their context, interrupting the traditional and simple form of the former barn. So although a cumulative in terms of a numerical figure has not been arrived at, when you are looking at the building in terms of how it sits against the existing structure, particularly the single story aspect where it will be adjoined, that's how you can come to the appreciation as to whether it's in scale and in keeping with that building.
Councillor Fleming?
Chairman, could I follow that up?
Yes, please do, if it's along the same thread.
And then I will shut up.
Thank you.
I hear what you say. I asked for some numbers, or I pointed to the lack of numbers, because once you start using comparative terms like small or smaller, then we're all entitled to come to different conclusions. If you quote sizes and volumes, we know we're on absolutes, not relatives. Be that as it may. In terms of design, is it a fundamental objection in this case that given that the barn itself is a single story, that if any application for an extension on this site comes up with a two-story proposal, would that lead to your objection?
So in terms of the design, one of the primary policies we would look at is in terms of Part G of the Development Requirements SPD. In particular, Part G8, which talks about works to traditional agricultural buildings. And in this, it states that extensions will not normally be acceptable. It does then go on to be very specific in terms of saying that other small extensions are unlikely to be acceptable, and extensions subsequent to the initial conversion are unlikely to be permitted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Just before I turn to you, Councillor Fleming, can I just follow up on something that I'm a bit unsure about? I think the applicant had described the previous barns before they were converted as substantially greater than what we see now in terms of their footprint. Do we have any previous evidence of the barns that existed before the conversion in the 90s?
I would draw reference to page 12 of the officer report, where the officer has included the plans as part of the previous application, the approved plans relating to the 1991 planning permission, and you can see on there the barn that was referred to, which is no longer present and was obviously removed as part of that conversion. The officer has also gone into the assessment as to why they don't consider that is sufficient justification.
Okay, Councillor Fleming?
Yeah, I'll go into a bit more detail about what I'm going to say in the debate part, but the whole point about this is all of that land used to be owned by a collection of brothers, the Bomford brothers, who had and they stored a lot of machinery on there. They were the biggest contractors for steam engine ploughing in the district, and they owned the Pitch Hill Works where it was huge. But it all started there. So this steading at one stage was huge. I mean, I've known it since the 60s because I served my apprenticeship there. So that's how I know. So the area was scattered in farm workers' cottages and workers' cottages. And I was up there on Sunday morning for the reasons I've already disclosed. And there's some very grand houses up there behind gated sort of pillars and whatever else now. There's a huge amount of development gone on up there because we don't need small farm workers' cottages. So my question is, this doesn't affect anyone. So you say that there's no public amenity. I'm reading through the notes, and it says that it's less than significant, I would call it less than significant harm. So I just wonder where the rationale is for refusing it on the fact that it doesn't the harm outweighs what would be less than significant harm. That's the question.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just that brings you to a question just to ask the case officer to just confirm the reasons for the recommendation for refusal in your report, which we will find on page where, Charlotte?
Yeah, so pages 15 and 16 go into the reasons that have been set out. So the first reason is relating to Part G, which is the part of the Development Requirements SPD I mentioned earlier in terms of the size and scale of the proposed extension and alterations being overly large, along with the design noting the large glazed openings and unacceptable level of harm. this is to retain the rural character of the original buildings in terms of the barn conversions and the open countryside location. And then the second reason goes into the impact on the Grade 2 listed farmhouse and the setting of that farmhouse. So the application, the concerns raised are in terms of the overall size and scale and the design of the addition in terms of the setting of that heritage asset as well. So that's all been weighed up in the planning balance by the case officer.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'll be right in thinking that or saying that you have had input from the conservation officer as well. Thank you for that. Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the land agent's drawings that were supplied by the applicant, obviously there was, and also on page 12, there was a existing barn there as well. Should we be looking or give it any weight that this used to be a brownfield site as well? Because there was an existing building on there. And I know that you've said significant justification to allow a two-storey building because it was a single-storey building, but was it not a brownfield area in any case? Or is it just classed as garden now?
So in terms of the, obviously taking into account that the barns were converted in the early 1990s, we would consider that the existing ground is garden land and not considered as brownfield land. And obviously I'll just draw your attention again to the section on page 12 of the agenda. So just where the case officers obviously mentioned about the previous barn which was on the site, which was removed as part of the original planning permission in 1991, and that was one of the conditions which then allowed the permission in the first place. So this was all to ensure that the conversions are acceptable in terms of that rural impact and rural character. And the case officer doesn't consider that there's sufficient justification for the introduction of a two-storey element on this side of the building.
Thank you. Councillor Parry.
Thank you. I just wonder whether the applicant sort of highlighted his sort of design and architectural background. I wonder whether he might be able to advise the percentage volume of the extension in terms of against the overall current barn range of buildings that would give us an indication on scale.
Charlotte, could you put up the perhaps put up one of those elevations again so that Councillor Parry can get a feel for the size of the proposed extension relative to the rest of that L-shaped barn? Is that the best one, do you think? Yeah? And it's a two-storey, so it feels like probably 20–25%. Does that help? Thank you. Councillor Padgham.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. So I can see from the report that you've liaised with the Conservation Officer and we've confirmed that we've had some input from the Conservation Officer. Did they object or did they give an opinion apart from confirming some of the facts?
The way that the process kind of operates with applications of this nature is that officers have a a discussion with the conservation officer, and then as part of that they will make their assessment. So we can check on file to see if there was a formal objection, but the way that our process works is that we would not normally, on an application like this, and like many applications that we brought to members of committee, the officer's professional view that they have put forward as part of their recommendation is informed by the advice that they have been given by the conservation officer. That does not necessarily mean that the conservation officer has explicitly said, I support or I object to this scheme, but they have given them their advice that has informed the officer's recommendation.
Happy with that answer? Thank you. Councillor Parry.
Can you confirm whether the conservation officer actually carried out a site visit?
In terms of the process that we carry out these type of informal consultations, I would be surprised if the conservation officer had visited the site as part of the consultation. But in terms of that response, it would be done as part of a desktop jury session.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Page 10, there is, this is repetition in some sense. There are the words here, extensions should be simple in design and small in scale. Can you point me to can you quote to me the policy statement that gives rise to those words?
I think when you read that sentence as a whole, it's talking about the effect of the extensions on the character of the barn. And so what it is saying is that in order to ensure that the former agricultural character is retained, extensions should be simple in design and small in scale. And as we've talked about with the Part G of the SPD, which also talks about extensions to formerly converted buildings. It's not that something explicitly says this is how it should be, because it's informed by the assessment of that individual site. So in determining whether the extensions are appropriate for this, you are looking at the building as a whole. And as I say, as part of the officer's assessment, they've considered the siting of the extension, where it sits and adjoins the existing dwelling, which is the single-storey element. And that is how they have come to the view that the extension in terms of because obviously page 10 is in respect of the assessment of the heritage impacts, that is how they've come to that observation. I wouldn't say that we have a conservation policy that explicitly says that all extensions should be small in scale and simple in design. As I say, it's all to do with that existing character of the building and whether it's sympathetic to it.
It's the last bit that saves the day, I think, because if you were going to say to me it's CS8 design, I'd accept that. But you can't simply have decisions made upon policies that are up in the air somewhere. They've got to be related to policy. So my question was and remains, I hear the fine words, but what policy in the core strategy gives rise to those words, or would justify an interpretation which would lead to those words?
Can you answer that, Emily, please?
In terms of the size, we're looking again at Part G of the SPD. So this is in G8, and this talks about extensions, and it purely says extensions will not normally be acceptable. Small outshuts or lean-tos in the traditional manner may, however, be acceptable where necessary to link buildings. Domestic porches, other small extensions and conservatories will not be acceptable.
So I take it there's an SPG. SPD is the sort I'm battering on about.
There is the SPD, which is Part G, which is referred to within the officer's report. There is also CS8 of the core strategy. If you refer to CS8 to Part C, appreciation, design and management. And this is where I was talking about, it doesn't explicitly say the extensions should be X, Y, Z, because it's all to do with the context. And the policy says proposals will be high quality, sensitively designed and integrated with the historic context. Hence why the officers have talked to the conservation officer and got their view as part of their assessment. It then goes on to say the design and layout of development proposals will be informed by an understanding of the significance of the historic asset and environment. And then creative and innovative design and architecture that helps to secure the conservation of, that probably isn't relevant to this bit, but we'll repeat it anyway, to secure the conservation of heritage assets and integrates new development into the historic environment will be encouraged where it is sympathetic to the character of the local area. Again, it's that interpretation of sympathetic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, that was very helpful.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. It helps us understand those particular aspects of that core strategy policy. Councillor Hench-Serafin, I'm going to start to wind up now because we've had a lot of questions. Okay. So if this could be the last one.
If the design was more in keeping with the existing barn, would that be more acceptable? Because this committee has passed applications actually not subservient to the dwellings in the past. And we have said in the past that we take case by case. Would that be acceptable if the design was in more keeping with the existing?
I'm reluctant to give a specific piece of advice in that respect because obviously what members are considering is the application before them. And obviously, you know, we do have an advice service where if the application is refused, the applicants may be able to engage with officers to discuss alternatives. But certainly I think in terms of the advice that I give to you as members, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to say that something else could be acceptable because that's not what we're considering. This is the scheme that we're considering.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. If you turn your microphone off, please, Councillor Hench-Serafin. Yeah, thank you. Right, I'm going to move us on from points of clarification into discussion and debate about this application. Who would like to start? We've seen a lot of information. We've heard from the ward member and the applicant. We've got a very good report and we've asked a lot of questions of the officer. Who would like to kick us off? Councillor Edden.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, in a strange way, a lot of the debate has been done via questions, I would suggest, and that's been really helpful in terms of the context of the reasons why we're looking at refusing this, or that we're being recommended to refuse it on. The part for me that I keep coming back to is this small in scale part, and I could probably, looking at the images that were up and the context overall, the harm on the listed building for me is perhaps debatable. However, I'm not an expert in this. This is just a sort of a layman's opinion as far as that goes. However, to my mind at least, I keep coming back very much to the scale, and I think a lot of the questions have given us almost an answer around how the officers have come to that. So, you know, at the moment, I'm erring on the side of, whilst one of the conditions for me is a little bit arguable, coming down on the side of the officer's recommendation. That's not a proposal yet, though, Chair.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Councillor Edden. You're right, of course, we have had a lot of questions, and that's helped to inform one's views on this. Just to say that, you know, as usual, the officers have made a recommendation on the basis of the development plan and material considerations. It's for this committee to weigh and balance these when coming to a decision. So, Councillor Harvey.
Can I thank the officers for enduring a hard time? I don't think this is quite as straightforward as it might appear from having read the papers, because there is an existing two-storey extension on the site, and this is a proposal for another one. However, what sways me, I think, is that two wrongs don't make a right, so it wouldn't be sound reasoning to say I would approve this on the basis there's already another extension on the site. What sways it for me, I think, is the information that although only the farmhouse is the listed building, it's the implication within the legislation of that the setting of that listed building needs to be protected. And as we're told on page 10, great weight has to be attached to the asset's conservation. The officers' view, and they have policy reasons for it, which we've established, that this extension is neither simple nor of an acceptable scale. And I think I can understand how they've come to that judgment. If they've got the support of the conservation officer and taken his view into account, although he hasn't formally given a definitive opinion, it strikes me that there is sufficient grounds here to accept the recommendation to refuse. So on that basis, I put my money where my mouth is and I'll propose it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harvey. So that's a proposal from Councillor Harvey to go with the officer's recommendation. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Parry, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think this has been a very interesting case, particularly where we have a situation where we've got a neighbourhood development plan. Where I keep coming back to this, it's almost right, but it's not quite right. And it comes back to the scale. I think my own view is that if it had been a single-storey extension, I wouldn't actually have a problem because I felt it would just sit down and there wouldn't be I don't think it's totally significant harm to the setting, but there is more harm than less than significance. And I think it's a shame because it's nearly there. But in my view, we have to protect the heritage of certain settings, and therefore, whilst I would love to go and grant this because of the situation and the background and the heritage and the history, for me it's just not quite right. So therefore, I will be going with the officer's recommendation on refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Councillor Padgham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this has been just to echo what Councillor Parry said, an interesting one and quite a sort of a difficult one if just thinking about sort of, you know, what the person, sorry, Mr. Gibson, so sorry. And Councillor Stanley also said about, you know, the hearing the Amesbury sort of family life and the future-proofing the dwelling and the sort of history of the family and what they're aiming to do in the future. But I also feel that the scale is an issue, and also the domestication of the setting with the different glazing and other features will change the appearance of the heritage setting, and I think that that is important. And although they haven't got a sort of official, I understand what you're saying about the process with the conservation officer, it did seem that they gave some advice around that which is why you've landed on refusal. And it would be a heavy heart to set, you know, with a heavy heart, I probably would be agreeing on that side as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Scorer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Initially, I thought, yes, I agree with the officer, but listening to the debate and the applicants, and I'm just thinking, you know, that obviously there's certain things in the report which is, you know, simple agricultural buildings. Well, that was developed in the 1990s, so for me, it's not an agricultural building anymore. And a reference to the brownfield site, so as well. And I do get that it's a two-storied dwelling. For me, it sort of levels up the whole building. And as I think, again, going back to that, the heritage asset of the Grade 2 listed farmhouse, you know, that for me, that ship was sailed in the 1990s when the other outbuildings of the farm were converted. So, and the applicant has said that there's a significant barrier and boundary in between both of them. So I think I'm going to come down on the effect of I'm going to go against the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Scorer. Councillor Fleming.
Like I was saying earlier, the whole aspect of that area has completely changed over the last 40 years. It used to be sprinkled with agricultural workers and people who work for Bomford Brothers on their ploughing steam engines and all of that sort of thing. But every time these houses sort of changed hands over the last 40 years, people have moved to them, expanded them, made them bigger. And like I said, I was there on Sunday morning and there's some very grand houses up on there. And I don't think that this extension would drastically harm the old farmhouse. I've seen the old farmhouse. It's been modernised several times. So from that perspective, I think the less than significant harm I'm kind of going to go along with, but I do think that there will never be any public amenity benefit because nobody drives past there. You only go up that road if you live there. Because they're all dead ends. The arterial road goes up and then they all split off onto the various things. And nobody goes there that doesn't live there. So from my perspective, and please, this isn't a proposal at this stage, but I would go against the officer's recommendation, but I'm struggling to put enough meat behind it to make it stick. So I would be going against the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. Councillor Edmund, please.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, I think, having heard various points here, Councillor Parry mentioned that it's close but not quite right, and that's probably swayed me further to put Councillor Harvey's money where my mouth is, and I will second the proposal.
Councillor Edmund, thank you for that. Anybody else like to speak? We've got a proposer and a seconder. I think at this point I should just sort of say where I am with it. I can understand how the officers reached their recommendation based on, you know, policy issues and the harm to the Grade 2 listed house. But I've listened to what Councillor Fleming has said as well, and Councillor Scorer, and I've been along the track onto the footpath, and you know, I really struggled to see it. So I think that in my mind I'm thinking I can understand where the officers are coming from, but I can also sort of empathise with the family who want to create the accommodation for you know, the extended family and to future-proof it. And I think that might, I mean, there might be another solution. But from where I was standing, I could see there might have been some significant barn there previously, and adding another two-storey extension on balance might be acceptable. So I'm finding that I'm a little bit on the fence at the moment. So Councillor Henshaw-Serafin, please.
Yes, I've looked at it, I've read it, and I don't think it comes to any harm. Adding this another two-storey extension on for family living keeps the family together, which is great. And I think it actually balances the building out. It's already got a two-storey extension on the one end and another on the other. And I don't think it affects anybody. There's no objections around whatsoever. So I will go against the officer's recommendation.
There's only a couple of people left to speak, I think. Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, yeah, it is a very finely balanced decision I think we need to make, but I think I'm coming down on the side of the conservation is important, and it's not a small extension as the policies are saying it should be, and so I'm going with the officers on this.
Councillor Padgham, you wish to contribute?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question about, because it does look like it will be finely balanced, if we were minded to grant, or if it did end up being granted, just wanted to talk about the natural environment, about the preliminary roost assessment, and there was going to be a suitably worded condition would be added to the planning permission about the method statement for bats and avoiding and about their conservation. I just wanted to make sure, or just ask if that could be included if we were minded to grant.
Can take a question on that.
Yes, so if members were minded to grant the application, we can certainly look at conditions, but in accordance with the comments that we've had from the County Council Ecologists, we would certainly recommend that a condition was included in terms of the reasonable avoidance measures for the method statement. So that would certainly be something that we would look to include as well.
Thank you.
Right, okay, members. So we have a proposal from Councillor Harvey, and that is to accept the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. That is seconded by Councillor Eden. Could I ask at this point then for a show of hands in respect of that proposal, please? So that's three in favour, and those against? One.
Four, Chair.
No, that I count.
Five,
I
Chair,
count
apologies.
5 there, Olivia, and an abstention.
Then one, Chair.
1. Thank you. So, members, that's failed. So, we needed a second proposal. So, thank you, Olivia. So, would somebody like to propose that this application is granted? Hang on a minute. Okay, so for those that voted against that original proposal, we would need a reason for proposing an alternative, which is a recommendation to grant. Some of those reasons would need to be around the harm and the scale and those things that we've discussed. So would somebody like to make a proposal in that respect, please? Councillor Scorer.
So just with the help of the planning manager, CS 8 Part C, was that part of it? And CS 9 as well? That we could use those for the refusal.
For the refusal, yes, they were cited as part of the refusal. But if members are minded to approve the application, then I've heard that I think it was Councillor Fleming said that he was struggling to put an actual reason to why he could support it. So I've not heard anything from members yet to ultimately members need to say why they don't consider, you know, those reasons for refusal, you know, that they agree with them. So why would they approve the application?
Can I just point you to page 15 then, and the recommendations of the officers, in that they stated the extensions they considered, the opinion, the size and scale of the proposed extensions to be overly large. So have a think about how you feel about that, and also the detrimental impact on the character and setting of the main grade 2 listed farmhouse.
Yeah.
Councillor Scorer.
But again, CSA, it's my interpretation. I disagree with it. That your interpretation, my interpretation is different to yours with and CS 9 and 20 as well.
So what you're saying, when you say you disagree with CS 8,
yes,
do you mean that
we're part C? So that you've, yeah, sorry.
So you're saying that you do consider that the proposals comply with it. So we consider that the proposals are contrary to CS 8. Okay.
Right, Councillor Scorer, do you want to just clarify that then, that you consider that the proposals comply with the CS 8, which is different to the conclusion that the officers have reached?
Yes. Is that enough, as in enough meat on the bones, or shall I put some more? Because CSA.
Yeah, you know, we'd also need to consider the harm, the effect of harm, and how we would consider that conservation officer's view on the less than substantial harm to the grade 2 listed building. Councillor Fleming.
Yeah, on page 11 at the top, it says after the informal consultation with the conservation team, it says less than substantial harm will be created by the development and is therefore considered contrary to policy CS8. And then it goes on to say about the less than no public public benefits. Like I was saying earlier, because of the total remoteness of this particular property, there will never be public benefits to it. The only benefits will be to the person that builds it. And there's been no objection from neighbours that have caused that. So from that perspective, I would see that the harm is even less than substantial harm. And the public benefits doesn't really apply because it's not where people see it, people look at it. So I don't see that it's going to cause any issues at all for anyone else other than the people who live there.
The challenge that I have, I'm very sorry, is that so the National Planning Policy Framework talks about less than substantial harm. And in terms of the scale of harm, because it has the word less in it, people interpret that as meaning no harm, but it's still more than no harm. So it's just that substantial is very substantial, and then you have less than substantial. Paragraph 215 of the NPPF talks about where a proposal will lead to less than substantial harm, which I've heard from members that they still feel that there will be less than substantial harm. that the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including, where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use. The way that the MPPF is worded, it's not that if there's not going to be any public nearby that heritage asset, that doesn't come into the balance. It's just where less than substantial harm is identified, what outweighs that less than substantial harm. And obviously, as the decision takers, we've recommended, in accordance with the Barnwell case, section 66 and 72, that needs to be given great weight in the decision. It's what do you consider outweighs that harm that has been identified by yourselves, or do you not consider that there is any harm?
I mean, it's for the committee to decide whether or not they agree with that assessment or not. You might say, well, we don't consider there is less than substantial harm because of where it is and what it is. Okay.
I don't know how I can put the wording that I want that will change that. That's what I was saying earlier. I don't know how I can hang more meat on the the reason to overturn the decision.
Right, okay. Hang on a second. Right, members, so for someone to come up with an alternative proposal along the lines of yourself, Councillor Fleming and Councillor Scorer, I think you'd be saying that you didn't consider, as in you weren't in agreement with the officer, and you didn't consider that there to be less than substantial harm to the farmhouse setting. The other thing that you would say is that you thought that the size and scale and design of the development, in your opinion, was acceptable. So would one of you like to make a proposal along those lines for those reasons?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'll propose that. Thank you.
Okay. I think, Emily, you've got the words.
Yeah.
Okay. And would somebody like to second it? Councillor Fleming, thanks very much. In which case, we've... Hang on a second. We're just now having a conversation about any particular conditions that might be attached to a grant. Well, let's just find out.
So if members are minded to grant the application, we would recommend, firstly, that a standard time limit condition, so 3 years for commencement of development. We would also recommend that the proposal, the details and drawings subject to the planning application are in line with the drawings submitted. The third condition would be for materials to match the existing building. The fourth condition would be that the climate change checklist as submitted so the details would be in accordance with the climate change checklist submitted. The fifth condition would be that the extension remains as ancillary residential accommodation for the use of the brambles rather than a separate residential unit in its own right. And the sixth condition we would recommend is the ecological condition. So that would be in terms of the reasonable avoidance measure RAMS method statement for bats. So those are the 6 conditions we would recommend, along with notes relating to the MPPF and also biodiversity net gain.
Oh, Councillor Harvey, you wanted to say something. I beg your pardon.
I want some clarification, if possible, Chairman. Am I right in thinking that the proposal to grant is going to be proposed on the basis that the proposers think that there is no harm whatever caused by the extension? Because it strikes me that's one point of view. But the other point of view, if they don't feel they can go that far, but they accept that there is some harm, and it's less than substantial harm, then my question to the officers would be, as far as the NPPF is concerned, is it a requirement that once there is established or accepted that there is less than substantial harm, does the NPPF absolutely require that there must be some public benefit of whatever sort to offset that harm? So I'm trying to clarify whether the proposal is based upon an interpretation which says there's no harm whatever, in which case there's absolutely no further question, or whether there is an acceptance there is some harm, less than substantial, in which case what is the role of public benefit and the necessity for that to overcome the harm, to offset the harm.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think we need to put that back to the person that proposed it. Are you considering that there is no harm whatsoever, in your opinion, or do you consider that there is still some harm, but to a lesser degree?
In my opinion, Chair, there's no harm.
Okay, no harm. And it sounds like that you've got a seconder for that as well. Thank you. All right, members, in which case we have a fresh proposal, Councillor Scorers, and that is to grant this application, seconded by Councillor Fleming. And the reasons for that is that you consider there's no harm to the listed building, and also that you feel that the size and scale and design of that development is acceptable. So please could I have a show of hands in favour of that proposal, please. So that is 5, and those against is 4. So that's carried. So this committee resolves to grant application. Let me just get my details out. Grant application 2402532. I'm just going to do that. Yeah, I'm just going to do that, Amy. For the reasons given in the proposal, with the wording of the conditions being delegated to the officers. Thank you very much, members. And thank you very much for those coming along to present on this application. Thank you. All right, at this point, I'm going to take a quick natural break, if that's okay with everybody. So 5 minutes. Thank you. back. Right, I think it's time we can reconvene. So we're now on agenda item 5. Oh, I should welcome Councillor Adam. Good evening, Councillor Adam, welcome.
Apologies for my late attendance.
Apologies accepted, Councillor Adam. Just to ask if have you got any disclosures of interest?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you. Right, so we're on application 2400721 FUL, that's Dog Hill Farm, Birmingham Road, Mappleborough Green. And the presenting officer is Ryan O'Keefe. So Ryan, if you'd like to, when you're ready, take us through the application, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site lies within the settlement of Mappleborough Green, as denoted by the black dot on the map. Planning permission is sought for the change of use of land for the stationing of 7 mobile homes for holiday let purposes, erection of an ablutions block and associated development. The site lies within the unadopted B Area B map of Mappleborough Green as defined in the emerging NDP, denoted by the black dot again. The site itself is surrounded by residential and commercial development to all boundaries as highlighted in the above aerial shot. The proposed development would be sited to the rear of the site behind the existing dwelling, with access afforded by the existing driveway. To facilitate the development, minor alterations are proposed to the existing dwelling to enable the access drive to be widened to the required standard for emergency vehicles, as highlighted by the plans on the screen above. The above slide shows an indicative proposed plan and elevation for the caravan unit. The proposed plans for the ablutions block, and then moving on to some site photos, looking back towards the existing dwelling, to the rear of the site, back towards the dwelling and the neighbouring petrol station to the left-hand side of that photo, back to the main access, looking back towards the roundabouts, to the petrol station, looking down the road, and then a street view looking back in towards the site, and the access to the development is in the corner from there. The officer recommendation is to grant the application subject to conditions as set out within the officer report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Okay, so we have some speakers this evening to talk to us about this application. So the first speaker is Councillor Maureen Berry, I'm assuming Mappleborough Green Parish Council. Councillor Berry. There you are, Councillor Berry. Come forward. Good evening, Councillor Berry. Thank you very much. For a minute, I thought you were. I wasn't sure you were going to come forward, but thank you very much. The microphone's controlled with the right hand. Looks like you've done it before, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And when you're ready, I'll give you sort of a warning with 30 seconds to go. Thank you very much.
It is evident that the proposal relates to buildings, which are of a size deemed to have physical attachment to the ground and to constitute building. However, the only building which is considered appropriate development in the Greenbelt are for agricultural and forestry purposes, as per the National Planning Framework 154 A and B, and that refers. The buildings for tourism accommodation are certainly not appropriate facilities. Please refer to MPPF 155E, states that all form of development, the only form of development that is appropriate is outdoor sport or recreation, cemeteries or burial grounds. Thereby, buildings are deemed not appropriate development for the green belt, and therefore classed as inappropriate. The officer has also considered that the site is partly enclosed. The development would preserve the openness of the green belt. It is not considered that openness of the green belt would be preserved by the development in any event. Case law has established that the development in a green belt has both spatial and visual dimensions. The spatial dimension is that there is harm in principle by reason of appropriateness. I'd refer you to previously advised relevant case laws. Turner versus the Secretary of State 2016, Samuel Smith versus Tadcaster Brewery 2019, Skerritts of Nottingham versus the Secretary of State 2020. The NPPF's section 150 to 155 also refers. The NPPF 215 quotes that the harm should be weighed against the benefits of the proposal. I think this is more harm than the proposal would allow. The previous application has been withdrawn, but because the access was deemed too narrow to accommodate the fire services. As no change has been made, the same objection must still stand. The proposed development is in the back garden of a bungalow, and the alterations to the buildings are not covered by this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Berry. Members, do we have any questions for Councillor Berry, please? Yeah. Do you have a question? Councillor Hench-Serafin, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, welcome. There's a bungalow next door to this application, isn't there?
Yes.
And have they made an objection to that?
Yes.
They have.
And they are here tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody further questions for Councillor Berry? No.
There's also, if I could just make, there's also been objections by the pub and the garden centre.
Thank you.
Fact, that's around this area.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Berry. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay.
Okay, we got a second speaker, and that is Gary Phillips, Director of Highbury Design Chartered Architects. Good evening, Mr. Phillips. Thank you. So 3 minutes as well, Mr. Phillips, and you start the microphone with the right-hand button. And when you're ready to go, I'll give you a warning when you come within 30 seconds of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, councillors. This site was originally presented a year ago, and it's almost a year to the day, when at the 11th hour an objection was raised by the fire brigade, but the application was otherwise supported by officers. So we have since addressed that issue with the fire brigade with the access. The site itself is some 40 by 55 metres. So just to give you an idea of the size of that site, a full-size football pitch is 105 by 68 metres. So we're talking about a site between half to two-thirds of a football pitch with an access off the highway of about 50 metres. So the site is located behind an existing property which we have partially within the application scheme shown the removal of the corner of the building so that we have a 4-metre access. So there is clear attenuation of what is effectively a key site which is surrounded by predominantly commercial but some residential properties. There are no technical issues or objections in relation to this scheme. Obviously, we have previously with the speaker beforehand listened that there are some objections obviously from local residents. The scheme proposed, however, is single-storey. There is the potential to obviously screen the buildings, which effectively are caravans, with the ablution block, and the closest of those caravan sort of sites effectively, or positions, will be some 21 metres away from the absolute corner rather than the overlooking from any residential properties around. So this location to the north of the district is key in relation to tourism and leisure, which is something which is encouraged through the NPPF, which obviously through officers' report there is the scope for limited infilling, but agriculture, tourism and also equestrian use are encouraged within the NPPF. So this particular location is within a mile of the cycle route number 5, the National Cycle Route. It is also within 9 to 10 minutes of the Aravallo Lake leisure sort of complex. It's also within sort of 15 to 20 minutes drive of a number of, as well as Stratford-on-Avon, other surrounding historical district areas such as Warwick Castle. So this is the purpose. We believe that it will bring an economic benefit to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phillips. Members, are there any questions? Councillor Hench-Serafin.
Thank you, Chair. You'll get it right one day. Good evening. What construction material are these caravans?
So the caravans are going to be a traditional, I would say, a prefabricated construction. So the intention is that they aren't permanent buildings, although the planning application is for a permanent.
Yeah. The external construction, what material would be on the external?
So normally there would be sort of a polyester powder coated aluminium sheeting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Adam, please.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify a point that you made about the size of the site and how that relates to sort of the area. So you referenced it in, say, about half the size of a football field. Do you say that that's kind of fairly large for the area, enough to take this type of scale, would you say?
Well, the location of the caravans are all sited so that they're compliant with licensing requirements. The site will allow for screening. It will allow for the spatial distances. So, for instance, if these were residential properties, we would be looking for 21 metres as a minimum to any residential properties. They are, however, single storey. So, really, from the point of view of what I was trying to, I suppose, express was that this is a limited infill site. It's not big enough, the site, to be of any agricultural or equestrian use, and hence that's why we feel this is an appropriate use for an area surrounded by commercial development.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, any further questions? I've got one for you, Mr. Phillips, please. I noticed some of the letters of objection raised issues and concerns relating to permanent occupancy of these caravans. Could you just explain how exactly they're going to be used?
Yeah, I mean, the application is for holiday use, so obviously that's the proposal in front of you. And as I said, this is a natural gateway. I live a couple of miles, as some of the councillors will be aware, from this site. Only the other day I had somebody come from Bristol staying in the area, and they obviously were amazed at the different places that they could come and visit. So we feel this is a good tourist area to stay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phillips. Any further questions? No? Oh, Councillor Fleming.
Yeah. Will there be a maximum time limit? You're just talking about how long people will stay. Will there be, you can stay for 2 weeks or 3 weeks? I'm just concerned about, people sort of coming and staying for 10 months, let's say.
There isn't a minimum and maximum stay, but typically from the information that the applicants had for stays within the area, you're talking 1 to 2 weeks. They're generally short stays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I don't think there are further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. And we have one further speaker on this application, and it's Councillor Shenton. Good evening, Councillor Shenton. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. I think, I'm sure you know the form. You have 5 minutes, Councillor Shenton, and I'll give you just a little indication when you've got 30 seconds to go. Thanks very much. When you're ready.
Good evening, members. To all intents and purposes, this is the back garden of the bungalow. The slideshow now on the screen, and if you could move through those steadily, just goes from 1999 to current date. But it hasn't been a back garden since at least 1974. MPPF paragraph 154 allows limited infilling. Infilling is usually taken to mean between two properties, not the back garden. It's clear and accepted that only letters of objection from residents have been received, and it's also clear that not one of the businesses that flank this area support this application. It will clearly affect the neighbours' enjoyment piece and their view, with 7 holiday lets, 7 cars, toilet block, and possibly over 30 adults and children at any one time in this small area. Some of the neighbours, as you've heard, are here. CS2, Section 9, CS and CS20 state that proposals will be sensitive to the setting, existing built form and neighbouring uses, and enhance the sense of place. This application fails that test. CS5 states that on an individual basis, some proposals may seem innocuous, but cumulatively they could form part of a general decline in the quality of the landscape and the amenity of the neighbouring properties. There is a further application that predates this application and is pending a hearing, as it seeks further structural changes, which the report makes no mention of. CS9 highlights the intended and existing use. In this respect, this application fails the test of CS5 and 9, as you're not being given the full picture. Sustainable travel issues and noise. CS5 Section 6 talks about promoting walking, cycling and being close to community facilities and good public transport links. Mapleborough Green is a service level 4 that scored only 3 points in total due to its lack of facilities. There is no public transport. Walking close to the dangerous A435, especially with children, is not recommended. You will rarely see a child walking in this area unsupervised. There are no shops, no medical centre, no children's facilities on or off the site. No attractions in walking distance. This fails CS5, Section 6, 7 and 8. Looking at the climate change issues, CS1 talks about sustainable development, while CS9 also states that proposals will respond to climate change. CS2 talks about development in a manner which minimises the need to travel and encourages other forms of sustainable travel. It also states that we should design development to reduce carbon emissions. Importantly, CS24, Section 5.10.10, talks about the increase in green, sustainable or responsible tourism. CS25 says the development should be located where they can access reasonable, sustainable modes of transport. The MPPF is clear from paragraph 161 onwards that it strongly advises that the planning system respond to the issues of climate change. So on climate change, it doesn't appear to meet the tests of CS1, 2, 24, 25 and the aims of the MPPF. Turning to highways matters, paragraph 614.9 of the core strategy, Red 1 and CS26, all clearly identify Mapleborough Green and its traffic issues. CS26 specifically talks at section 7.2.10 about the A435 corridor and says there are serious adverse effects on quality of life due to the high traffic volumes, including a large number of HGVs. These issues are real, and with the prospect of unsupervised children on site with no security, it is possibly only a matter of time before someone would be injured. Fire and safety. The reporting indicates that the site complies with CS9, as the fire service have raised no objection. But this is not the case, because what the fire service are saying is that they have no objection as long as approved document B is adhered to, a slightly different message. If you're minded to approve this application, I would ask you to consider the following amendments and additions. 1. Planner's condition amended to read maximum number of holiday homes should be limited to 70 subject to the licensing approval. 2. A condition that this site complies with approved document B in full without amendment. And 3, the model standards for holiday caravan sites are complied with in full, especially with regards to fire breaks, fences, on-site gas cylinders, and the proximity of petrol and diesel. The plan should also include a play area for children or a restriction that no children are allowed. Licensing also requests a register so that we can keep an eye on occupation. Occupation should be limited to lengths to be decided by yourselves. Alternatively, you could just decide that the combination of community concerns, sustainability, climate change concerns, A435 issues, structural changes, the very real fire risk, lack of children's play area are sufficient for you to reject this application tonight. Hopefully I was within my time.
No, a bit over, but it's fine, really. Thank you very much. That was no, very comprehensive. So I didn't want to stop you or put you off. So that's fine. Thank you very much, Councillor Shenton. Members, do we have some questions for Councillor Shenton, please? It's Councillor Parry.
Thank you. Good evening, Councillor Shenton. You mentioned that the neighbouring businesses were objecting. Does that include both the pubs that obviously serve food and would more than likely benefit from holiday makers staying in a caravan and wanting to go and have a meal, have a drink, etc.? And does the garden centre have a cafe as well?
So, thank you for the questions. Yes, as far as the pub goes, they made their feelings very clear in the original application and are still holding that objection. They are not happy about it. They actually got CBRE, an international firm, to represent them at the first application. As far as they were concerned, their objection still rolls over. The garden centre object, and they have got a cafe there, a small cafe, but they object to it right there on the other side. The petrol station haven't supported it either, right next to this property. There are no businesses in that area, no residents in that area that support this.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming, yeah.
Good evening. The runoff from this, I know it's still a permeable sort of surface being whatever, but there's going to be more runoff than there was when it was a grass garden. Is there any provision or any problems likely with the water runoff?
Thank you, Councillor. We already have a problem developing with runoff from the development that's taking place on the other side of the road, which this authority is in partnership with Redditch on, where we gave up some land with a plantation, and it looks, it's been described as being hit by a nuclear bomb. It's devastated that area. Now that has caused, because trees and that aren't soaking up that water, we already have problems now coming down the hill, across the roundabout and down the A435 with drainage. And county are aware of this, but at the moment nothing has been done. They're going to jet it, but the jetters, as we've realised, as we found out tonight, the company they use for this is no longer in business, and so we're going to have to wait some time. So we have a real problem already with water runoff.
Thank you, Councillor Shenton, for explaining that pre-existing conditions there. Anybody else got a question for Councillor Shenton? Councillor Shenton, I do have one for you as well, please. You mentioned in your presentation that neighbours would be affected by overlooking this development. I got the impression, rightly or wrongly, that this area is pretty flat, actually. Can you just sort of help me understand where those neighbours are going to be that are overlooking? If not business neighbours, where are the residential neighbours here that are going to be affected, please?
Sorry, I forgot to switch my mic off. Where you see the property on the land, so at the moment you have the green area, the enclosed area, as I say, which hasn't been used as agricultural land for at least 50 years. When you look to the northwest, if you like, you've got the house. The other part of where the neighbour lives is the other part of that. It was split into two to become two properties.
All right, so there's an immediate neighbour just to the north of the
Just to
property,
the
is there,
north.
with what appears to be a very small garden area. Would that be right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Councillor Shenton. The report mentions the fact that, or it's stated as a fact, the application site is covered with hard standing. Given Councillor Fleming's concern about runoff, it would be logical to think that if it is covered with hard standing, that whatever runoff problems are likely to occur may already have occurred. Can you help us out on understanding the condition of the ground and the flood risk or the runoff risk, please?
As far as I'm aware, currently, as you say, it is hard standing. In the past, that hasn't been the case. As far as the runoff goes, we didn't have any great issues with runoff until more recently, with as I mentioned, the other site. Our worry is that with this intensification of number of people there and that this could only be exacerbated. Whether that, I'm not an expert on, if you like, on how that will affect the drains and the gullies, but at the moment you may be right. It contributes to the existing problem that we have. It's just being exacerbated elsewhere.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shenton. Everyone finished? Oh, Councillor Fleming, please.
Just a quick one. When we discussed this last year, we had the 3.7 metre clearance requirement that was only 3.1. I think if we were minded to grant this, I would like a seriously strong condition that work is done and signed off before it.
Is a question for Councillor Shenton, or is just a statement? Okay, we'll finish then.
The question is, is it still 3.1 metres at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely no changes have been made. I think if you look on the plans as part of the package, I think it indicates 3.118 would be the opening, which would make it just about 0.118, and that's after the structural changes.
Thank you, Councillor Shenton. Thank you for that. Councillor Fleming, you can ask points of clarification in that respect in a second. Councillor Shenton, thank you very much indeed for your contribution this evening. Okay, members, so here's an opportunity to ask points of clarification from the officers, and I can see some hands under the table and flashing up. Councillor Parry, you first.
Yes. With regard to running a holiday let business, quite often people cannot rent a holiday let property continuously for more than 31 days. Would it be unreasonable to include that in the condition? And also a number of holiday let caravan sites are not open 12 months of the year. They tend to be open for 10 months of the year. Would it be unreasonable if we were minded to grant to have those as it's being positioned as a holiday let business operation?
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor. It's a sort of planning and licensing matter that sort of crosses over. In terms of planning, we apply the holiday occupancy restriction, and this condition, we previously were quite strict in terms of conditioning occupancy for certain periods of time, but in terms of passing the relevant condition tests within the MPPF, it was not enforceable because of the nature of a holiday let. We are quite happy that the condition that we would put on the application would ensure compliance, and obviously if there was any breach, it'd be an enforcement matter, and then obviously licensing have their own conditions as part of the licensing for that site.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, I saw you next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Berry, in her presentation, made reference to at least a couple of legal cases. Are the officers aware of those cases? And if so, what relevance do they have to our consideration of this application?
I've had a look at the councillor's objection that was submitted as part of on the application. If you just bear with me, I'll have a look at Mapleborough Greens as well. I can see that the objection references a number of case law, and it seems to relate to the interpretation of spatial and physical dimensions of the green belt. I don't believe that the officer will have referenced them directly within the officer report, and it's not clear from the comments to me exactly what element of that case law is pertinent to this case. Obviously, the officer has done an assessment as to whether they consider that there is an impact on the character and openness of the green belt, and that's available within the officer report. And that is what I would draw members' attention to.
Thank you, Emily. Next, I had Councillor Scorer. Is that right? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Part of it's just been answered, but I picked up, and whether I just got it the wrong end of the stick, but obviously it's Mapleborough Green have an unadopted neighbourhood plan, and part of that at the moment, the site, is it open countryside, or have I got the wrong end of the stick of that? Because looking at that photograph, it doesn't look like open countryside.
Obviously the NDP is within the unadopted draft BUOB for Mapleborough Green, and obviously the core strategy identifies it as a LSV. So in terms of our policy, it's within a local service village and not open countryside.
Thank you, Councillor Scorer. I had Councillor Hencher-Seraphin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officer tell me what distance between these vans are, as they are shown on the map?
Obviously the application and the proposals have been consulted on. Part of that is with our licensing team, and they have confirmed it's within the they make reference to, there is a where is it, sorry, just a second. Within the sort of legislation for caravans on a holiday let site, they meet the required, which is up to 6 metres, which these have been positioned to ensure they're within that criteria.
Does that answer your question. 6 metres minimum.
The officer wasn't directly looking at me.
Sorry?
When I asked the question.
Right. Did you want to ask it again?
If somebody's talking to somebody who's asked a question, look at them.
Right, okay. Yeah, I'm sure he's probably be focused very heavily on trying to find the reference to the licensing requirements, the minimum separation distances between the caravans. But,
well,
yeah, I take the point.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Aluminium caravans is 5 metres minimum.
Do you have any further questions, please? No? Okay, super. Hang on a second. I'd Councillor Padgham next. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the turning circle for the fire and rescue, because they have raised some concerns and they've said that there are several distances that need to be met. However, it's been decided that despite the fact that they have required a minimum turning circle requirement, the officer has decided that because it would be difficult to achieve, it's okay to maybe not adhere to that. And I'd just like to understand does that mean that if there was a fire and a fire engine was called in, would they then block the access? What if an ambulance needed to get in? What are the safety implications of that, please?
I don't think we would be able to advise you as to what the safety implications would be in terms of that specific scenario. As we have done, we've set out what the Fire and Rescue Service have said in their comments, and we have made a recommendation and an assessment based on their comments.
Councillor Padgham, are you happy with that? We've got no objections and advisory note recommendations from Fire and Rescue. Thank you. So I move to Councillor Adam next. I've got you, Councillor Passingham, don't worry.
Thank you. Just regards to residential amenity, I might be answered by having a look at the proposed plan, but the report references the amenity of the units themselves, which I think we've talked about, but I'm just interested in the impact it would have upon the host dwelling, as it were, and how, particularly because the access obviously goes straight past it, they've got the alterations to accommodate that access, and it doesn't look from these plans that there's much outside residential amenity, and if there is, it might be taken up by the new development. Are you able to sort of elaborate on that? Maybe get the plans back up as well, just so I can see them. That'd be great, thank you.
That's one of them. There is a more in-depth one which shows it closer to the host dwelling itself. Okay. At the moment, you would have seen from the site photos that they've sort of got the existing dwelling and the sort of rear area, and it's all fairly open. What the proposals will do is essentially return what amenity land towards the rear of the dwelling was originally, and when we've measured that for the dwelling, it would accord with the relevant amenity space standard in that regard.
Thank you. Ryan, while you've got that up there, I have a question as well. So just jump jumping in while we've got this plan up, the way in which we're managing the bins, because on a holiday let, one might normally assume that the people would take the rubbish to a commercial waste bin rather than for the district council to be collecting. But I see there are some bins shown. Can you just elaborate on what is proposed in respect of waste and recycling, please?
Normally, holiday let accommodation is a private waste collection or commercial. My understanding from the previous application, they proposed a sort of communal bin area to the front of the dwelling near the road. And on this application, they've considered that actually it would be more appropriate to provide individual bins to each holiday let accommodation, which we could then control by waste management condition if we needed to.
Okay, Ryan, thanks very much. Councillor Passingham, I know you've been waiting. Better late than never.
Councillor Shenton mentioned a whole list of sustainable development and climate change issues, such as no public transport nearby and the distance to shops and a number of other things. You don't seem to have taken those into account in any of your report.
Thank you. So initially, the proposals themselves, it sort of it comes from the principle of development in the first instance, which is where is the development. In this particular case, we've identified that it's within the Category 4 LSV of Mappable Green, not open countryside. So in terms of the principle in that regard, that is a sustainable location because it's within a village, not open countryside. We've then obviously gone on to CS24. Which, you know, wants visitor accommodation, you know, they support it to be within villages rather than in the open countryside. So that's sort of our initial assessment in that regard, that it is, you know, in terms of the principle, it's within a sustainable area because of it being within a village setting and not in an open countryside. Obviously, conscious comments have been made about the site's location, the busy main road, but as I think other members of the committee have mentioned, there are, you know, visitor facilities within the immediate vicinity, i.e. the garden centre, the public house that people can walk to. You know, there is going to be a reliance on private transport to get to places further afield, but the crux of that policy, which is to support tourism-based accommodation, is being met within that village location.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for that. Look, final question, I think, Councillor Adam.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to dive into definition of infilling with regards to this. I think it's something you've probably prepared for, but it feels to me that infilling is often a bit of a Goldilocks thing. You don't want it to be too big or too small. There was obviously the comment made about it being behind the existing host dwelling as opposed to adjacent to it. Have we got a firmer definition that we can rely on to kind of firm this up? Just because obviously it's a critical reason for us overcoming the Greenbelt criteria, or at least one of them. So I'd quite like to just have a bit more understanding about how we're qualifying that definition.
Let me just take a little look, and I'll come back to you just a second. On this particular application, the development itself sort of fell into two parts in terms of the greenbelt. The ablutions block, which is the more permanent structure, that came within the appropriate allowed development within the greenbelt under 154E. And then the stationing of the mobile homes came under the material change of use of land. In terms of a definition of limited infilling, in this particular case, because the site is within a village and where it is in terms of development to all of its boundaries, we made the assessment that owing to that we would consider it to be limited infilling because of its position. I know it has to go by the site and the context, and that's where we've come to the assessment in that regard.
Thank you very much, members. Okay, thank you, officers, as well, for that. Some explanations. One further question, Councillor Hatcher-Serafin.
Ryan, can you show me where the cars are parking on this site?
Yeah, it won't be a second, Councillor. Let me... So, on the proposed site plan, each holiday accommodation will be provided with 2 parking spaces, either immediately adjacent in parallel to the relevant caravan or next to it. But yes, each one will have 2 spaces. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Happy with that? Thank you very much. Right, members, here's opportunity now to debate and discuss the merits or otherwise of this application. Who would like to kick us off? Councillor Parry, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is an application that was before us over a year ago, and now has come back with some alterations to overcome the fire and rescue areas in terms of the access. Whilst I take on board the concerns raised by the neighbouring businesses, the parish council and obviously the ward member, I can't see a material planning reason to refuse this on the basis that it is infill, which is permitted under CS10. It responds to our tourism element, CS22, and therefore I have no problems about recommending grant and would like to propose that to Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parry. That's a proposal from Councillor Parry to accept the officer's recommendation to grant. Councillor Adam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second that. I find that the application, there's a degree of contrivance to it, but I think that's the nature of the beast when it's this type of application. And as Councillor Parry have said, we did see this before. There were concerns. It went away to address those concerns, and we've come back to a point where officers are happy. I wanted to dive into some of the things like the infill. That's why I asked the question of the applicant. They came back with an answer I was satisfied with. I appreciate it's not going to be popular to all the neighbours, and I think that is something we should be alive to. But in terms of policy, we don't have any reasons not to be able to support it, and then obviously will be the economic benefits therein as well. So yes, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Eden, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to second. Councillor Adam beat me to it. Again, as Councillor Parry said, there are no material reasons I can see to go against this. It's conditioned, it's licensed accordingly. For short-term holiday lets, the space looks fine, and obviously pending any decision on the sort of parallel application around the bungalow itself to make this work. I was more than happy to second, but yeah, I'll be going along the lines with Grant.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Councillor Hendra-Seraphin.
Yes. I worry about the access to this busy roundabout. I go past that many a time, and it's like a racetrack. I do worry. There's been numerous accidents around that corner there. The other thing I feel is wrong, I think it's overdevelopment in that area and overbearing on the next door neighbour. There is a type of application which is very, very difficult at the moment, a couple of miles away for a caravan park, which is in the open countryside. It's called Outhill View. This, to me, doesn't accommodate for any children playing in this area. There is no facilities for any of that. I just think it's overdevelopment and it's in the wrong place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to contribute? Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, I know this area very well, and to me this is a very unsuitable place for a holiday lets. It's a very busy road. It's surrounded by the garage and the pub next door, which can be very noisy. There's no facilities for children. There's no public transport, yeah, I think I'm not. I can't really find the planning grounds to refuse it on. But so I might just abstain. But I think it's a very unsuitable place for such a development.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming.
Again, access really. If we are minded to grant this, I'd like it to be conditioned that 3.1 metre is increased to 4 metres before anything happens at all. I'm also concerned about that S-bend as you come in. 16-ton fire engine full of water trying to swing round there. That front caravan's is a bit vulnerable as it goes round that corner. And when cars are parked, where are children going to play? If it's meant to be holidays, people take their children on holiday with them. And I know there are sites where children aren't allowed, so you might get away with it on that score. But whilst we say there's no direct reason to refuse this, I don't have to like it. Thank you.
Okay, that's fair enough. Anybody else like to speak? In which case, I'm going to take us to considering that we had a proposer in Councillor Parry, and that was to accept the officer's recommendation to grant, and that was seconded by Councillor Adams. So can I see a show of hands for that proposal, please? In favour of?
That's 5, Chair.
And against?
1, 2, 3. That's 5, Chair. And so it will be your casting vote.
In which case, I will vote, as I did to start with, in favour of the application, of the recommendation to grant. In which case, the committee resolves to grant 240071 FUL, that's Dog Hill Farm, Birmingham Road, Mappleborough Green, in accordance with the recommendation of the officers and the conditions that are set out, 11 of the conditions set out on the page 28, including a waste, as we discussed, a waste management plan or something to that effect, given that there'll be a number of caravans occupied by different people for short periods. I think it's appropriate we have something to cover that. Right, thank you, Amy. So it's too late to add that on, so I shall withdraw that suggestion. Okay, thank you very much for that, members. So back to the agenda. I think we're on any important or urgent business. So I can close the meeting. Thank you, members. Just to say, hang on a second, because Emily's got something as well. Thank you very much indeed, members. That was a very